Have you ever taught someone a new language only to have it backfire horribly? I taught my mother-in-law Mandarin over the course of 2 years as a gesture of family connection, and she used it to insult me at family dinners in front of my Mandarin-speaking parents for 9 months before I figured out what she had been doing, and I want to tell you about the 4 months that followed. My mother-in-law is named Vivian. Vivian is 68. Vivian was retired from a career as a pediatrician. Vivian had been the kind of mother-in-law who had been outwardly warm and inwardly cold for the 11 years I had been married to her son Caleb. I am Chinese American. My parents emigrated from Taiwan when I was 3. My parents speak Mandarin at home. Caleb's family is white. Vivian had asked me about 3 years ago if I would teach her. Vivian said she had been wanting to be able to greet my parents in their language. Vivian said she had been wanting to be a better grandmother to our future children. I had been touched. I had agreed. The lessons were 2 hours every Sunday afternoon at Vivian's house. The lessons continued for 2 years. Vivian was a fast learner. Vivian had medical Latin in her background and approached Mandarin tones with the precision of a person who had spent 40 years memorizing drug names. By the end of 2 years, Vivian could hold a conversation. The thing I had been not knowing was specific. Vivian had been using YouTube tutorials between our lessons. Vivian had been learning insults. The using began about 9 months ago. My parents had been visiting for a long weekend. We had been at Vivian's house for dinner. Vivian had greeted my parents in Mandarin. My parents had been delighted. About halfway through dinner, Vivian had said something to me in Mandarin. The sentence had been brief. The sentence had been delivered with a smile. The sentence had translated to a phrase that referred to women who had not been respected by their husbands' families. I had been processing. I had assumed I had misheard. Vivian said another phrase a few minutes later. The second phrase had been the kind of phrase that did not have an innocent interpretation. My father had put his fork down. My mother had said in English, smoothly and warmly, "Vivian, your accent is so good. May I help you with a few phrases that are sometimes mistranslated by online tutorials? Let me show you the proper way to say what you were trying to say." My mother had then said a different phrase in Mandarin, which she had repeated 3 times for Vivian to practice. The phrase my mother had taught Vivian was a polite, formulaic compliment to a hostess. My mother had been giving Vivian a graceful exit. My parents had pulled me aside after dinner. My father had said in Mandarin that Vivian had been doing this on purpose. My mother had said she had been suspecting it for a few visits. My mother had said Vivian had been not making accidental mistakes. I called Geneva that evening. I was sitting on the edge of my bed with the door closed because Caleb was downstairs, and I was not ready to talk to him about this yet. Geneva picked up on the second ring. She did not say hello. She said, in Mandarin, "I have been keeping a list," Geneva explained. She told me she had started writing down the things Vivian said in Mandarin 3 visits ago. Geneva said she had recognized that the phrases were not mistakes. Geneva said, "Let me read it to you." She read 7 entries. Each one had a date, the phrase Vivian had used, and the literal translation into English. The first few were bad enough. Comments about my cooking that were really comments about my worth, but 2 of them hit me so hard I had to close my eyes. One of them translated to, "A wife who cleans well but thinks poorly." Vivian had said that to me at a Sunday dinner while I was clearing plates. I had thought Vivian had said something nice about the meal. The other one was worse. The phrase was, "a borrowed daughter." Geneva explained that in Mandarin, this is not just a casual phrase. It carries a meaning that says someone will never truly belong to the family they married into. It says you are on loan. It says you can be returned. Vivian had called me that to my face while I was sitting at her dining table eating food I had helped prepare. I asked Geneva why she had not told me sooner. There was a long pause. Then Geneva said, "Because I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe a woman who sat with my daughter every Sunday for 2 years learning our language was doing it out of love." She stopped talking for a moment. Then she said, "But love does not memorize insults." After I hung up with Geneva, I could not sleep. I started going through my own memories. One of them came back so clearly I could almost smell the charcoal. It was a barbecue about 6 months ago. Vivian had handed me a plate. She had said something in Mandarin. Her tone was light. I had laughed because I had not fully caught the words over the noise of the kids playing in the yard. The phrase meant, "a woman who eats more than she earns." She had said that to me while handing me a plate of food at her own barbecue. She had smiled while she said it. I felt sick. I got a notebook from the drawer and I wrote it down. Whale called me the next morning. He is always quieter than Geneva. When I picked up, he did not start with small talk. He said, "Your mother wanted me to tell you something." Vivian asked me at that dinner if I was proud of my daughter. She asked me in Mandarin. I said yes. He paused. Then she said, in Mandarin, that pride does not pay for a house. I did not tell you because I did not want you to carry it. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone and I could feel my chest getting tight. Whale had been sitting across from Vivian at that dinner, and Vivian had looked at my father and told him, in his own language, that his pride in me was worth nothing. She had said it in Mandarin because she knew Caleb would not understand. She had counted on his grace to protect her. That was the moment the whole thing changed for me. Vivian had not just been insulting me. Vivian had been going after my parents. She had taken the language I gave her, the bridge I built between our families, and she had used it to humiliate the people who gave that language to me. I now had a list of 11 confirmed instances, 7 from Geneva's notes, 3 from my own memory, and the one Whale had just told me about. I did not tell Caleb yet. I needed more than a list. I needed Caleb to see it for himself. I started thinking about where she was getting these phrases. The answer was on the shared family tablet. Vivian uses it when she visits our house. I picked it up that afternoon while Caleb was at work. I opened the browser and went to the video history. There was a playlist saved under the title Conversational Practice. The playlist had 14 videos in it. 9 of them were normal Mandarin lessons. 5 of them were not. 5 of them had titles like Common Insults in Mandarin, How to Say Rude Things Politely in Chinese, and Phrases Your Chinese In-Laws Won't Expect You to Know. I read those titles 3 times. Vivian had not stumbled into these videos by accident. Vivian had searched for them. Vivian had saved them to a playlist. Vivian had studied them. I took screenshots of everything. I put the tablet back on the coffee table exactly where it had been. I texted Caleb the next day and asked him to meet me for lunch. When Caleb walked in, he kissed me on the forehead and sat down and said, "So, what is going on?" I did not ease into it. I just slid my phone across the table and said, "Look at this." Caleb picked up the phone. He swiped through the screenshots, reading the video titles, looking at the playlist name. He did not speak for a long time. Finally, Caleb put the phone down. He said, "How long?" His voice was quiet, not angry quiet, hollow quiet. I said, 9 months that we know of. Caleb closed his eyes for a second. Then he opened them and said, she told me she was learning Mandarin to be closer to your family. I looked at him and said, she told me the same thing. That was the sentence that landed. I could see it hit him. The same lie, told to both of us, separately, for the same reason. Caleb put his hands flat on the table and said, I sat at those dinners. I was right there. I should have heard it. I told him that was not fair to himself. I told him he does not speak enough Mandarin to have caught any of it. That was the whole point. Vivian had chosen the one language at the table that Caleb could not follow. Caleb looked at me and said, that is exactly why she did it. She picked the one language I could not police. I told Caleb about the plan. I told him that I had asked Geneva to host a dinner and that Geneva was going to keep the entire evening in Mandarin. Caleb leaned back in his chair. He said, you want to trap her? I shook my head. I said, I want to show you what she sounds like when she cannot hide behind a sentence I taught her. Caleb was quiet again. Then he nodded. He said, okay, but I have a condition. If she falls apart at that dinner, I am not going to let you be the one who cleans it up. I will talk to her the next morning. This is mine to do too. I agreed. That hope lasted exactly 3 days. I was at home on a Wednesday afternoon folding laundry when my phone rang. It was Vivian. Vivian's voice was warm. She said, I have been thinking about our lessons. I miss them. I was wondering if we could start again. I have been practicing on my own. I found some wonderful videos online. I think I am ready for more advanced conversation. I stopped folding. She was talking about the videos. She had no idea I had seen the playlist. Vivian was not slowing down. She was speeding up. I made my voice as calm as I could. I said, let me think about it. I called Geneva that evening. I told her everything. Geneva was quiet on the other end. Then she said, then we make the dinner harder. Geneva explained. Instead of just speaking Mandarin, Geneva was going to use idioms, proverbs, layered phrases that carry cultural meaning you cannot get from a video. Geneva said, if she has been studying insults, she has been studying weapons without studying the culture that holds them. We will show her the difference between knowing words and understanding a language. The dinner was set for Saturday. Saturday morning, I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when Caleb leaned against the doorframe and said, Mom called me this morning. She told me she was excited to practice her Mandarin with Geneva tonight. She said she had been reviewing her notes. He paused. She thinks this is a performance opportunity. Vivian did not see a room full of people who knew what she had done. She saw an audience. She thought she was winning. Caleb and I drove to Geneva's house early. We got there about 2 hours before anyone else was supposed to arrive. Whale was in the kitchen. He stood at the counter chopping something, but he was not really chopping. When I walked in, he put the knife down and said, come here for a second. I followed him to the little hallway. He said, I need to tell you something before tonight. At the last dinner, Vivian said something to me in Mandarin that I did not tell anyone. He looked up at me. She said your mother raised you with soft hands and no spine. She said it while your mother was in the kitchen getting dessert. My hands started shaking. Vivian had sat at a dinner table with my father and waited until my mother left the room and then told my father, in his own language, that his wife had raised a weak daughter. When Vivian arrived, she was carrying a bottle of wine. Nice wine. She walked through the front door and she looked at Geneva and she smiled and she said a greeting in Mandarin. The greeting was polished. The tones were clean. It was the kind of greeting that sounds impressive to someone who does not speak the language. Geneva smiled back, and then Geneva responded, not with a phrase, not with a simple hello. Geneva responded with a full paragraph of Mandarin, natural speed, full sentences. Vivian blinked. I saw it happen. The mask slipped. Geneva kept going. She sat Vivian in the seat directly across from her, and she started the meal by speaking exclusively in Mandarin. Geneva looked right at Vivian and started asking her questions. She asked about her week. She asked about her hobbies. Every question was delivered at the pace Geneva would use if she were talking to me or Whale or anyone else who actually spoke the language as part of their daily life. Vivian tried. She managed a few responses, short ones, but Geneva did not stop. And then Geneva asked Vivian a proverb about family loyalty that most Mandarin speakers learn when they are young. Vivian did not understand it. Her eyes went slightly wide and her mouth opened a little. Geneva repeated the proverb. Vivian tried to answer. What came out of her mouth was a string of words that did not connect to each other in any way that made grammatical sense. The table went quiet. Nobody corrected her. Nobody helped her. I did not translate. Then Geneva did something I had not expected. Geneva put her chopsticks down gently. She switched to English. Her voice was warm. She said, Vivian, you have a beautiful vocabulary, but I want to ask you something in English so there is no confusion. Vivian's shoulders relaxed a little. I think she thought she was being rescued. Geneva was not giving her an exit. Geneva said, when you told my husband that I raised our daughter with soft hands and no spine, did you mean it as a compliment? Because in our culture, soft hands mean a mother who worked hard enough that her daughter did not have to. And no spine means a daughter who bends before she breaks, which is the strongest thing a person can be. The room went completely still. Vivian's face went white, not pink, not flushed, white. Caleb turned to look at his mother. Vivian found her voice. It came out shaky but fast. She said, that is not what I meant. You are misunderstanding the context. Caleb said, Mom, stop. His voice was flat. He said, I saw the YouTube playlist. I saw the screenshots. I know what you have been doing. Vivian's head turned toward me. She went from caught to cornered in about 2 seconds. She said, those videos were for learning. I was trying to understand the full range of the language. Geneva did not let the sentence sit. Geneva said, Vivian, I taught English as a second language for 15 years at a community center before I retired. No one learns insults by accident. You learn insults when you want to use them. And then Whale spoke. It was the first time he had spoken all evening. He leaned forward slightly, and he said, in Mandarin, slowly and clearly, every tone placed exactly where it needed to be, a phrase that I knew the moment I heard it. It is an old saying. It translates to, a guest who poisons the food is not a guest. He let the Mandarin hang in the air for a moment. Then he looked at Caleb and he said it again in English. A guest who poisons the food is not a guest. Caleb closed his eyes. Vivian started crying, the quiet kind. She said, I was not trying to hurt anyone. I was trying to be part of the family. That was when I spoke. It was the first time I had said a word during the whole confrontation. I said, you were part of the family. I gave you 2 years of my Sundays. I gave you my language. I gave you the thing that connects me to my parents. And you turned it into a weapon against me in front of the people who gave it to me. Vivian looked at me. I looked right back. I said, "You did not want to learn Mandarin to join my family. You wanted to learn Mandarin to tell my family what you really thought of us," while smiling. Caleb stood up. He looked down at his mother and he said, "Mom, I need to say something and I need you to hear it. For 11 years, my wife has bent over backward to make you feel included. She taught you her language. She drove to your house every Sunday. She never once complained about you to me, even when she probably should have, and you used every bit of that against her." He stopped. Then Caleb said, "I am not choosing between you and her. You already made that choice for me. You chose to be the person who does not deserve to be chosen." And then Geneva stood up. She walked around the table to where Vivian was sitting and she set a piece of paper down on the table in front of her. It was the list. Every phrase, every date, every translation, written in Geneva's careful handwriting on a single sheet of paper. Geneva said, "This is what you said about my daughter in my language at my table and yours. I wrote this list because I wanted to be wrong about you. I was not wrong." Geneva sat back down. Vivian picked up the paper. Her hands were shaking so badly the paper was moving. She read it. She read the whole thing. She did not try to explain any of it. She read every line, and when she reached the bottom, she set the paper down and she said, very quietly, almost in a whisper, "I am sorry." And for the first time since this whole thing started, it sounded real. Vivian left that dinner and called Caleb the next day. She did not ask for forgiveness. She asked for a referral to a different therapist, one who specialized in family dynamics. Caleb gave her one. I did not resume the Mandarin lessons. Vivian did not ask me to. Over the following weeks, Vivian sent Geneva a handwritten letter in English. Geneva read it, folded it, and put it in a drawer. Geneva told me, "She has a long way to go, but the letter was honest. That is a start." Caleb and I are closer now. I speak Mandarin with my parents openly at every family gathering. No one translates for Vivian. Vivian sits quietly. She is learning to be uncomfortable in a room where she does not hold the power. I sometimes catch Vivian listening, trying to follow along. I do not help her. The language is mine again. It was always mine. Now everyone at the table knows it.